In this first video of the cardiovascular system, we will talk about the function of the heart. The heart is a fist-sized organ and sits on the left side of the chest. There are 4 chambers: the right atrium, right ventricle, left atrium, and left ventricle. There are also 4 valves that allow blood to flow during contraction. When the valves close, they produce the lub-dub sound that can be heard with a stethoscope over the heart. The tricuspid valve separates the right atrium and right ventricle. The pulmonic valve separates the right ventricle from the pulmonic artery. The mitral/bicuspid valve is between the left atrium and left ventricle. And the aortic valve separates the left ventricle from the aorta. The 4 layers of the heart include the endocardium, which is the innermost layer, the myocardium, epicardium, outermost layer, and the pericardium, the fibrous sac around the heart. The 5 properties or actions of the heart include automaticity, the ability to initiate its own electrical impulses and contractions; conductivity, the ability to begin and sustain an action potential in an orderly fashion, such as with depolarization, leading to the heart's contraction. The impulse begins at the SA node, which is considered the pacemaker of the heart, then to the AV node, next to the bundle of His, then to the left and right bundle branches, then to the Purkinje fibers, and finally to the ventricles. It then repolarizes, or rests, before the next depolarization, or contraction. The next property of the heart is rhythmicity, or the predicted sequence of depolarization, contraction, and repolarization, rest. Another property is contractility, which is the ability to respond mechanically to an impulse. Depolarization begins as sodium enters and creates a positive charge. The heart contracts during systole, and the ventricles pump out blood. The final property of the heart is excitability, the ability to be electrically stimulated. It requires the exchange of ions, such as sodium, potassium, and magnesium. So, in what order does the blood flow through the heart? Deoxygenated blood is brought to the heart by the inferior and superior vena cavas. It then goes to the right atrium, through the tricuspid valve, into the right ventricle, then through the pulmonic valve and to the lungs. Oxygenated blood is then brought to the left atrium, through the bicuspid/mitral valve and into the left ventricle. Finally, to the aortic valve, through the aorta, and throughout the body. Blood carries oxygen and nutrients throughout the body, forms blood clots to stop bleeding, provides immune cells to fight infections, brings waste to the kidneys for filtering, and regulates body temperature. Now that we have discussed the heart's function, let's define a few terms that you may have heard regarding your heart. Blood pressure is the amount of pressure in millimeters per mercury that the blood exerts as it flows through the arteries. Systolic blood pressure, or the top number, is the heart contracting. Blood flows from the ventricles to the body. Diastolic blood pressure, or the bottom number, is the heart relaxing as the ventricles are filling. Heart rate is the number of beats per minute. A healthy adult has anywhere between 60 and 100 beats per minute. Stroke volume is the amount of blood pumped out by the ventricles each beat. Cardiac output is stroke volume times the heart rate. So the amount of blood pumped out by the ventricles times how many times those ventricles are beating. Preload, or end diastolic volume, is the amount of blood in the ventricles after diastole. It's the ability of fibers to stretch during filling time. The Frank-Starling law states that greater the ventricles are stretched, the greater the heart is contracting. The preload can be increased with an MI, aortic stenosis, or fluid volume excess. Afterload is the resistance to the blood as they are leaving the ventricles. It can be influenced by ventricular wall size and tension, also by blood pressure.